All right, a couple things I want to talk about today. I was reading earlier today Trump's counterattack against the deep state. I had a laugh. Because you have to really be patient for good things to happen around here. Because nothing ever takes place in the news, folks. When you see the news, it's all code. And for the average person, they try to make a story out of code words. And so that's why so many of the mainstream news is so boring and so redundant, because the average person has no clue what they're talking about, why it's so repetitive and so redundant, and why nothing gets done. But the real events take place behind the scenes, and they code each other all the time with stuff, and it just drives you nuts. Drives me nuts. That's why I don't watch the news. I know how it works. But I still like the classic remark of the century, Eric Trump's, "The liberals are not human." That will always be my favorite. It's what I've been saying for 20 years. Because they've all been soul scalped, folks. They've all been soul scalped. You can't fight if you don't know who your enemies are, folks. And that's the biggest problem I have today. It's because the people of this nation don't know who their enemies are. Because instead of preaching with a Bible and a sword, the preachers are preaching with a Bible and a cup of tea. And they've taught Christians to be soft on evil, to lay out the floor mat for evil, and to never stand up against it. When the Father asks in Psalms, "Who will stand up for me against the evil and the wicked?" I will. I'm not afraid to stand up against the evil and wicked, because you know what? I'd rather die fighting for what's right than have to live with what's wrong. Not everybody in this country and in this world is a child of Adam and Eve's. Not everybody is a son of Adam's. There is a hodgepodge, a melting pot in this world of various seed lines, folks. And unfortunately for us, the Christians have always been beat down and repressed by the other dominant seed lines. We thought America would be one nation under God, and the Luciferians came over and made it one nation under Lucifer. And that's what the fight has been. What is the deep state? It's the shadow government. What is the shadow government? It's the very ones the presidents warned about. Because when you go to Washington, D.C., there's invisible controllers. The presidents are elected by the people, selected by the shadow government to run to begin with. And then they get to D.C. and they have no power to change anything because the invisible rulers, the invisible controllers, control everything. Who are these invisible rulers and controllers? Today it's called the deep state. It used to be called the shadow government. Satan's people, folks. The fallen. And I'm not talking about humans. I'm talking about the reptilians who serve with Satan in the background. Who are the reptilians? If you look in Genesis 3:15, when Satan was judged and cursed in the Garden of Eden, the whole Genesis metaphor of the snake being in the garden and offering Eve an apple, it was all a metaphor, folks. Lucifer was in the garden. He seduced Eve. He had a child with Eve. Cain was not Adam's. Cain was Lucifer's. And everybody in the deep state and half the world knows this. Why are the churches so dumb about it? Because they like to hide in secrecy. Cain's kids, in fact, in Freemasonry, one of the things they learn is they are the sons of Cain. Most of them. The Illuminati, the sons of Cain. Now you can say, well, Cain's Cain's offspring was wiped out at the flood. No, it wasn't. Because it carried through with the wives of the boys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The boys were righteous. Noah was righteous. I believe it was Ham's wife that carried Cain's seed through. Esau I loved, Jacob I hated. That was the father speaking. Why did he hate Esau? Because Esau went to Cain's children and procreated with Cain's seed line. Esau, the Edomites. It never was wiped out at the flood, folks. It just restarted again. What was wiped out was the fact that there was only 8 righteous people on the planet at that time with real human DNA. Because the giants came back. The giants weren't wiped out at the flood. Moses had to fight against 20 cities of them just to reclaim our Israel, the whole area. Caleb and Joshua fought against them, 20 cities of giants alone. Giants existed. Giants were still here. We still see the giantism DNA throughout the offspring. And it's getting more rampant because see all these people walking around that are like 7 feet tall now. That's that giantism defect. It's also the fact that they're fooling around with 3-party DNA with our children. I don't want to talk about that today. What I do want to talk about is imagine if Fox turned back into a network that was actually newsworthy. Remember back in the day when Glenn Beck came out? And he was actually revealing some truths on his show. And then they turned him into a putz and destroyed him and then canceled his show. And then Megan Files came out, and that was hot. And they did the same thing. They destroyed her, turned her into a putz. She self-destroyed herself. Every time they stand people up for disclosure, they then turn around and hate them and get rid of them. Does that make any sense? Because I would love to see some real disclosure be put out in America. Whatever happened to Jesse Ventura? He was doing really good. People were catching on that, wait a minute, that's a masonry symbol on his jacket. He's not one of us after all. Because see what happens is so many people throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because I learned a long time ago, good information comes from everywhere. That Satan will stand up his own to disclose. But what happens is the Christians throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if they don't like that person, they won't listen to them. But yeah, it helps not to play games. You know, I much rather deal with people when I know who and what they are than the ones who lie to me. The ones who lie to me are the ones who anger me. To tell you what they are up front, say, hey, I got some info, then we're good with that. Honesty always works better than deceit. You try to stand up all these Satanists and smooze them on the Christian crowd, and we're onto that. We're onto it. We know all your little Satan hand signs and your symbols and your code speak. We're onto it. So don't try to throw it over us like a blanket and tell us to drown in it and accept it. No, we don't. But I'm not one to throw out baby with the bathwater. I've gotten it from everywhere, in the strangest of places. You can find truth and disclosure information. What I would like to see is for President Trump to break ties with the lizards of England, the royal lizards. Everybody knows she's a lizard. She shapeshifts into a reptilian. The whore of Babylon, the whore of Lucifer, Queen Elizabeth. The real one was killed years ago. But what, back in the 50s, 60s? And they've kept the charade going like they do Clintons, because they were killed years ago too. So was the real Obama. And they keep the characters going. They keep the Obama character going, the Hillary Clinton character going, and the real ones are dead. The Queen of England. And to break away from the Draconians in the Vatican. Throw out all their agencies and federal government agencies here in America that aren't truly American. What is it? The Queen runs the CIA and the Pope runs the NSA. Where's America in this? Why are we spending our tax dollars to fund the Queen's and the Pope's spy agencies in America? Seriously, folks, when do you get mad enough to where you start stepping your feet down and yelling for changes and for something to stop? I had some fun. It was last year, the year before, destroying that base under the NSA headquarters in Utah, because most people don't even realize they put a huge 10-level base underneath the NSA headquarters in Utah. And way underneath there, the Queen put one of her mazes. She likes these mazes. They're her fun mazes. Not that she would ever go there, but her inklings were picking up after her. They like to abduct people off the streets and put them in these mazes, and they're little mazes. They're walls, they're mazes, and make people run through them to try to get away from the real lizards, who then pin them down in the mazes and kill them and eat them, because they actually will shape-shift into their lizard forms. That's fun to them. That's what the Queen was doing in Scotland under the Balmoral Castle. She had a big maze underneath there, and I destroyed it, and she got pissed. Good for her. That's what they do. Destroying people is sport to them. And if you don't know who your enemies are, folks, you're just going to keep supporting them over and over and over again. The deep state is not your friend. The deep state is run by the Queen, the lizards. Lucifer's faction of reptilians, those who fell with him, were all cursed to be snakes, reptiles. That's them. That's the lizards. Satan, the ones who fell with Lucifer. The fall of heaven. 1/3. He took 1/3 of the angels with him. They were all turned into reptilians when Lucifer was turned into a reptilian for his judgment in the Garden of Eden for impregnating Eve. The Great White Brotherhood. All the top witches and the Satanist covens in the country, all linked. If you look online, you look at the Great White Brotherhood, you see all the Ashtar Command people, the New Age. They're another arm of the Great White Brotherhood, but they don't tell you about is the Indiana and California branches. And all the humans involved at this level. They don't give you the human level of it. The Illuminati, they're all part of the Great White Brotherhood. Secret societies, they're all part of the Great White Brotherhood. The Jewish Zionists, fake Jews, Khazarian Jews, they're not even real Jews. When Jesus was here, he called them the offspring of the devil. It was literal seed line of the devil. Jewish Zionists, and that was the scribes and Pharisees back in that day. Freemasons, their god of light is Lucifer. You know something's evil and bad when you have oaths of secrecy, and one of the requirements is that you become a good standing member of your community. And the way of doing that is by joining fair boards and whatever's local. They get involved with rescue animal shelters, and they have to become upstanding members of the community. That is their image they have to build and maintain, that they give back. Whenever I hear someone on TV talking about giving back, that's like code word for I'm a Mason. War against them all, folks. We need credible agents of disclosure to stand up. My prayer for the nation is this, that the apostate Christians wake up out of their apostasies and go back to following the Father. The example Yahushua set with his apostles, not the paganisms and doctrines of the devils in the churches today that most of them are following. Most of them are following Satanists and doctrines of devils. And they think they're following Jesus, Yahushua. That people wake up about the cashless society coming, the chip of the beast, how cryptocurrencies have led the way to cashless, how debit cards with chip implants, chips embedded in them are leading the way, that everything done in darkness and secrecy be brought to light, that the true history books be opened, the true intentions be made known and revealed outwardly to the public, that the wicked are exposed and brought down low, that the truth be stood up and raised high, that the phonies and liars suffer plagues and are exposed for what they are, that this nation returns back to God, one nation under God, the Most High God, kicking the Luciferian God and his ilk out of this country. You know, it is already prophesied that America will be destroyed. Well, let it be destroyed with the people fighting on their feet in resistance instead of whimpering on their knees in defeat to the evil ones. Let us fight and go out as warriors instead of wimps. You know, I've asked the Father that the nerve centers of all the agencies, hidden and known, that are set up to assassinate and harm President Trump be destroyed, that they're sunk, set on fire, destroyed by Father's hand. Those who want to do good are raised up and protected by him, and that the wicked are exposed and brought down low. The picture I like to see is one of the rats circling around the drain. You know, I was looking at news articles earlier, and it was talking about how most people object to trannies being kicked out of the military, and I'm thinking, most of what? Who is most people? Because 85% are yelling, "See ya, cupcakes." Most libtards object to trannies being kicked out of the military. I'd like to see all the libtards eliminated out of the newsrooms and replaced with real Americans. Most libtards are just subhuman species, folks. You don't even realize what you're dealing with these beings. Most of them have been soul scalped. They're synthetics. They're clones. They're fakes. They don't even act human. They act psychotic. They act like they're going to go rabid. You know, when all those witches met against Trump after he was elected, and they were praying for his self-destruction, and we prayed against that and asked that all those who were praying that prayer receive their own self-destruction that they were sending to Trump. I have a video on that. You can look through my YouTube channel. And now look at all these libtards. They're just like psychotic. They're self-destroyed already. They're destroying themselves. All the witches who thought that they could use their powers to come against Trump. Well, guess what? Christians stood up and Christians prayed and God protected Trump. We need to see preachers back in the pulpits, folks, with the Bible and a sword, preaching heaven and hell, righteousness or holiness or hell. It would stop a lot of this nonsense that's run amok and gone amok in this country. Nobody fears God. Nobody fears hell. That's why I spent last Monday night talking about hell. And I'm going to do so next Monday night. I have more of a longer show on Monday nights, and I like to teach during that time. Watch the weather patterns, folks. Watch the weather. It's going to start getting bizarre. And you know why it's getting bizarre? Because a pole flip is coming. If you look up in the sky and you see thousands of new starships, spaceships in the skies. They're here. They're all coming in. The clock is ticking, folks. The Bible describes the last kingdom on earth. Daniel and John describe it. They warned about an alien hybrid kingdom that will dominate the earth in the last day. Iron mixed with miry clay, but they won't cling to one another. That's the last kingdom. That's the one coming in. It's what I've termed the New Age alien kingdom. Anyway, folks, time's running out already. Go to my website, click on the donate page, and keep me on the air. Keep me on the air. It's not like I have corporate sponsorships here. I need your support to stay on the air, because this is all 100% listener supported. Anyway, folks, I'll be back Friday at noon. Till then, everybody, God bless.